Hi guys, so today's video is going to be a series review for the Netflix show Castlevania. The bulk of this video is going to be non-spoiler. I am going to chat about a few spoilers at the end, but I'll give you a heads up before we get there. The setup for the story is we follow the vampire Dracula as he is trying to get revenge on mankind, and we see a trio of unlikely heroes trying to prevent him from accomplishing this. The story does a fantastic job of balancing both very serious, heavy, high stakes and kind of philosophical musings with some very campy banter, ridiculous jokes. I think it can be very difficult to find the right balance of those two things, but when you can find it, for what I personally like, it just ends up working so well. I can be very forgiving of a lot of other elements of the show or story, even if they don't click for me in other places. When you can get that blend of campy and serious, emotional and silly, I end up falling in love. And that's definitely what happened with this show. I was so invested in the characters. I was so distraught when I thought our characters were in danger. The villains can do the most horrendous things, but if you see them being hurt or you see their plans going wrong, you're kind of like, oh no, but one time they were nice to a dog, so I don't want bad things to happen to them, even though they kind of want to murder everyone. It was just a really weird, bizarre situation where even though this honestly at the end of the day is kind of just amazing animated fight scenes, the story really pulled me in, and sometimes there wasn't a lot. Sometimes it was bare minimum, but the amount that we did get really hooked me, and overall as a series, I ended up absolutely loving it. But I am going to dive into some specific details, not spoilers yet, but just some specific elements about the show that I think helped in making me love it, but also might not be to your liking. There were some things that I didn't love, but like I said, I kind of was willing to look over those things because I love so many other things. First off, the way in which the show was written was really weird because season 1 is short and in my opinion not that good. It does a good enough job, I suppose, of making you interested in what comes next. I just didn't think that they did a whole lot beyond just exposition. That said, if you're going to give this show a try, I would highly recommend not just watching season 1, but watching season 1 and season 2, because the format of the seasons is you have season 1 that feels like a prologue. It is a shortened season, so there's fewer episodes. Season 2 feels more like where the story actually begins. And then we have seasons 3 and 4. And I would say that the first arc kind of cuts off for a lot of our characters at the end of season 2. And then moving forward, we almost have a different arc, and it's much more meandering, which was sometimes a little frustrating, but ultimately I thought this was very reminiscent of the way that you see a trilogy happen in books. I know a lot of you are book fans too, so I'm going to kind of compare it to how we often see trilogies executed. Because of how the publishing industry works, usually you will find the first book in a series will have a fairly satisfying ending, because there's no guarantee that the book is going to sell well, and so publishers often don't want to commit to signing an entire series until they know, okay, well, this is lucrative for us, so we'll go ahead and sign you for the rest of the series or the rest of the trilogy, however many books it is. And if you think of the first and second seasons as one season, then that is essentially like the first book in a trilogy, where we do have certain arcs have a satisfying ending, and then we keep going. And so season 3 had kind of middle book syndrome is what I'm going to call it, because it was trying to pull us out of that first arc and then transition us into the last arc. It, as a result, I thought made the third season the weakest, and then the final season has this big hurrah. It's kind of race to the finish line, super action packed. I don't think it was as emotional as season 2 was, but it's quite the ending. Seasons 3 and 4 are very meandering. It definitely felt like they didn't know if they were going to get to do more seasons. I'm not sure what the contracts look like, but it seemed as if they were sure where they were going with seasons 1 and 2. It definitely seemed like they knew how to foreshadow things. They absolutely knew what the entire arc was going to be. And then it kind of seems as if, oh, okay, well, we're going to get another season, so we got to figure out what we're doing moving forward. And maybe they had a plan all along, but it doesn't come across that way. There are entire arcs for characters in season 3 where you're like, what? They just are they just foraging in the woods for most of the season? And then some of the payoff isn't amazing by the end, in my opinion, as far as seeing where certain things go. It's just kind of random. So, in my opinion, if you love the characters, you won't care, because I loved the characters. I'm a very character-driven reader, watcher in this case. So because I loved the characters so much, I really wanted to continue following them in seasons 3 and 4. And the plot lines are weird. You really don't know what's going on. Maybe if you played the video games, you had that extra knowledge. But if you did not, some of the plot lines are very bizarre. So while I felt the storytelling in the later seasons was not as strong, there were a couple other things that I did love, and one of those would be the action scenes. Oh my gosh, pretty much the entire last season is one amazing fight after another. Fantastic animated fight scenes. Oh my gosh, some of the best. They were incredible. I can't say enough good things about the action scenes. There are so many kind of triumphant moments. There's people facing off that you weren't expecting to face off, or there's just twists and turns. Halfway through season 4, I was like, where's this going? They're gonna ruin the whole show. There's no way they're gonna be able to tie all this together. None of this is working for me. And then it totally did work for me. And it's because they were efficient. The characters are kind of the meat and potatoes of the show, along with the action scenes, of course. But I found that this show did an amazing job of making you care about the main characters and really rooting for them. They're your heroes, and it's kind of classic good guy versus bad guy in that the heroes, they're heroic, they're trying to save the world. The bad guys are almost mustache twirling level bad guys, where they just truly want to destroy everything, and they have some motives, and the motives really shouldn't be strong enough, but they just somehow brilliantly make you feel like it's enough. You're like, I get why you want to destroy all of mankind, Dracula. And gosh darn it, do they make you care about them? It's kind of fascinating. And I don't know how they do it, but the show is extremely violent. And almost as a result, you kind of can tell yourself that the bad guys are perhaps not as bad, even though you know they are. But they'll just do the most horrific things. They'll have terrible plans. And then you're like, well, but that one fight was really cool. Or, but like that sad thing happened to them back in the day. Or, oh, but they just had a moment with another character and it was really sweet and heartwarming. And you just end up liking all of them. It was really frustrating almost, because you knew you should be rooting against them, but you kind of just wanted everybody, like, why can't everybody just get along? That's kind of what I wanted, even though some people did unforgivable things. The closest thing I can relate it to would be the fact that I feel like Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood, for those of you who have seen that, has this hierarchy of bad guys, and I find them all entertaining at the very least, but also sometimes kind of awesome. And in this show, everybody had their moments. Everybody was so cool. Everybody was so interesting. It was so fun and entertaining to follow all of them. But then the good guys, even though they're a little bit, like they're the heroes, they were not your typical heroes. We have a rough around the edges, kind of, I'm scraping by, but the world needs me, so I gotta get it together and try to save the world. You have another character who has some emotional connections to some of the villains, and so therefore there's a lot of weight in seeing them have to go head on against them. And then there's another character who's classic, like optimistic, we can do it. And the banter between them, the way that they develop their relationships, the way they get on each other's nerves, it makes it kind of grounds it. It's so well done. I absolutely loved all of the characters. In any other story, I definitely think I would be far more critical of what I felt was a lack of foreshadowing and setup for some of the plot lines. I definitely think that some of the big moments could have hit harder had they done more to prep them. But because I love the characters so much, I was fine just going with them wherever they went. However, if you are somebody that is very plot driven in your entertainment, it might frustrate you. It might frustrate you quite a bit that there are essentially no rules to the magic. You will see characters find a weapon for the very first time. It's the only weapon in the world like it. And then in the next episode, they're doing work with that weapon and they're an expert at it. And you just have to go with it. You just have to go with it. It's visually spectacular. So I don't think it will bother you too much. But if you're somebody who needs everything to be very logical, you need your rules and limitations and the magic system, you're really not gonna get that here. A smaller thing that actually did frustrate me a little bit in the last season is they really didn't seem to try very hard whatsoever when it came to the dialogue. I swear there would be entire scenes where if you took a shot every time somebody said a specific word or phrase, you would be drunk. You or die. It was just so excessive. They would say the exact same thing over and over and over again. So I don't know. I think they relied a little bit on the action scenes and the fact that that was going to be the big pull for that last season, and they really went hard at it. And it was, I mean, I liked the ending, but I wish they maybe would have had some more significant scenes between characters. It kind of felt like maybe they phoned in a little bit some of the interactions. A little bit of a summary to determine, for those of you who haven't watched the show, if it might be something that you would enjoy. It is exceptionally violent, but it is very entertaining. The fight scenes are fantastic. The characters are fantastic. The voice acting is amazing. The voice acting is so good. So that's another big plus. But if you are somebody who prefers a plot-driven story where you can see from beginning to end the way they lay everything out, if you really like stories with a very well fleshed out magic system, if you like things to make sense, if you're a logical viewer, the show might not be for you. It's highly entertaining, so many interesting characters, but it's not exactly super intricate in its world building. All that said, I am going to jump into spoilers, so of course if you don't want anything revealed to you, probably want to stop watching. But for those of you that have seen it, I have to talk about a few moments in the show, so here we go. I'm going to work backwards. I'm going to start with the ending. That ending was so freaking happy. I was like, what's going on? Are we really getting this happy ending right now? I couldn't believe it. And usually I feel like really, really perfect bow on top type of endings. I tend to really like tragic endings, but my goodness, was I so pleased with this because it was so unexpected. I was not expecting a happy ending for any of our characters because the whole story is very dark and morbid and people are being slashed apart and their faces are constantly being squished. And I just didn't think that we were going to get a happily ever after. I thought for sure Alucard was going to go crazy after season 3, which I kind of feel like they played it up. The fact that Alucard was kind of very morose and down and was like turning into his father, and then it kind of all that needed to happen was for him to talk to some people and then he was fine. So I kind of thought that was going to be more of a thing. But because I thought that we were going to see Alucard spiral, I thought that Trevor, when he died, I was like, is he dead? I saw Saint Germain do the little thing with the key, so is the infinite corridor open? And so I wasn't sure, but I was like, something's gonna happen to Sypha or Trevor. I thought for sure. I was not expecting Dracula to get a happily ever after, but that's what I was talking about in the non-spoiler section. There's just so many characters where I'm like, I just really want the world to be nice to you because it hasn't been very nice to you, and I know you also haven't been very nice to it. And maybe if you were to balance like what the world did to you versus what you did to the world, I mean, like maybe yours is worse. But also, I just want you to have a hug and a happy life. So the fact that we got that, I was happy. I completely understand though if you hated the ending, if it was too cute and if it was too happy. I absolutely understand. If you want to mention your thoughts on the ending, just make sure you write spoilers in your comment so that nobody else gets that ruined for them. Keeping with some elements of the last season, there was that whole back and forth between the newer vampires that were introduced, and obviously one of them ends up not really being who you think they are. They end up being like ultimate evil Grim Reaper. But there was a whole really long conversation between those two, and I'm like, okay, guys, we could have spent more time having interesting things happen with Alucard or with Sypha and Trevor or any of the other characters. I also thought that the weakest fight scene, which the fight scenes are amazing. The fight scenes in that last season are amazing. But there was the fight with Trevor and the vampire where Trevor randomly uses a sword, and I legit was like, where is his whip? What is he doing? I don't understand. Did it break? Or, well, he just found this new cool weapon. What is happening right now? I think maybe it's just that I'm comparing it to all of the magnificent fight scenes, but was anybody else seriously confused as to why Trevor wasn't using those? Overall, I really did just find myself very satisfied with the ending and the fight scenes. I thought that a lot of the rest of the season was not the strongest. I thought they randomly introduced people that ultimately just died, and they weren't around for long enough for me to really care. But I didn't even really care that much because that reunion with our heroes was awesome. It's basically the exact same moment that we get in season 2 when they go to Dracula's castle, which both times I was pumped. I was fist bumping the air. I was so into it. I wasn't even mad. I was like, this is the same thing, but it's awesome again, except for they've leveled up and then they're reuniting. So there's that element too. And I was excusing any other frustrations I had. I loved it. I loved it. It did not have the emotional impact I felt. I mean, it was a happy ending in season 4, but the end of season 2 is devastating because it is so bittersweet, which is one of my favorite kinds of endings to an arc, because Alucard, with everything that happened with his dad, when Dracula realizes, when he says, like, what am I doing? I'm killing our boy. And I'm like, Dracula. And it was just so emotional. So season 2 for me was my favorite. I absolutely loved, that season is fantastic. Just perfect. Oh my gosh, so many things. I mean, they were sitting around in the library for a really long time, but still, I think season 2 was really well paced. It introduced interesting characters. It built things really well. And the conclusion was very heartbreaking. I loved season 2. Season 4, that ending and those magnificent fight scenes that were delivered to us were just chef's kiss. So good. Season 3 was okay. It was weird. It was really weird, but I mean, I guess it got us to season 4. And then season 1 is just, it's so much shorter. It's such an introduction. So it's probably my least favorite, but I definitely want to know, how would you rate the different seasons? I also want to know what your favorite scenes were. What moments were you just so devastated by? Who was your favorite character? Which of your villains did you think was the most interesting? Which character death surprised you the most? Of course, obviously all these are spoilers, so mark spoilers for these things too, but let me know just in general your thoughts on this show. I know typically I talk about books, but I had such a good time watching this show. I'm definitely going to be rewatching it. As soon as I finished it, I was like, are there any cool t-shirts for Castlevania? And I was looking up t-shirts and stuff. I haven't bought one yet. But anyway, let me know if any of you are also fans of this show now. I hope you had a good time watching it. Thanks so much for watching this video, and I'll see you guys later. Bye.